Welcome back, guys. XTech Talks. I'm here with one of my favorite people, the one that I call the Second Amendment secret weapon, Ashley Hlebinsky. How are you today, ma'am?
I'm doing good. It's been a long day, but I'm really happy to be in Arizona, and the fact that it is not raining. It's real nice.
Yeah. It rained a little bit earlier this week, but that is one of the best things that I've experienced since moving here is that the weather is ideal. It was a little bit hot, but like now around this time of year, you cannot beat this weather at all.
It's hot in the summer, but there's this thing called air conditioning, and it makes it really nice, and then it's beautiful the rest of the year.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Happy to be back here.
So usually I start off with what was your favorite, or what was your first experience with a gun? But before we get into that, tell us why you're even here in town this week.
Oh, why I'm here, it's like existential. So I am here because there is a conference tomorrow at Arizona State University. There's a research center there run by Jenny Carlson. She's a sociologist, really cool person. And she is doing, there's two conferences, but I'm only participating in the one tomorrow. And it's just kind of a small group of people from the gun world, but then also academia. I'm kind of both. And it's basically conversations about, what does the gun community, what does the gun industry get right or wrong? How can they be better? And then what does academia get right or wrong and how they can be better? And so there's two panels and then a presentation and then basically breakout groups for like how people on different viewpoints about guns can kind of come together and have dialogue. So. And
this is something that you're obviously familiar with because you run your own 2A symposiums. Is that the correct title of it?
That was not, but that's okay.
Tell me what the correct name of it is.
So I'm a firearms historian. I do a bunch of different kinds of things, but one of the things that I do is I'm the executive director and co-founder of the University of Wyoming College of Law's Firearms Research Center. So you were close.
No, what's the event that you guys host every year?
It's different every year.
Oh, it's a different name?
Yeah. We do a fall conference, but it's different every year. So The first year was mental health and firearms, and then last year was the National Firearms Act, and then this year, actually, in a couple of days, we're partnering with Springfield Armory National Historic Site. Not the company. I always think the real one. So we're partnering with them and Springfield Technical Community College because it's right on the Armory grounds. And we're doing a conference called Sparking the Revolution, Flintlocks, Gunpowder, and Policy in America's War for Independence. So it's a 2-day conference, and we're looking at, obviously, since it's the 250th, because it is the 250th right now, a lot of people, want to focus on the fact that next year is officially the 250th. But it actually, the war started this year, so especially in New England, which is where the conference is. So it's very timely. It's going to be basically 2 days of conversations, a combination of founding era conversations, which founding era history has become the most important determinant to determining the constitutionality of a modern gun law. So after the 2022 Supreme Court decision, history has become very prominent. So we're mixing it with some legal scholarship on the time of the Revolution and a little bit later, which is known as the founding era, which is around the ratification of the Second Amendment. And then also, some material culture. So we'll have some kind of history of firearms. We'll have history of early battlefield ballistics from the Revolution, so kind of trying to balance it. So it's a holistic look at the time period.
Sheesh.
I said a lot.
This is why she's my favorite.
I just said a lot. I'm sorry.
No, that's perfect. Man, now we will go all the way back to the beginning.
That's like a Tarantino. Now
Exactly. We're going to reverse engineer this. What was your first experience with a firearm?
So that's a good question. My first experience with a firearm was in a museum setting. So I didn't grow up around guns at all. Didn't even know there was a rifle range at my high school growing up. So complete neophyte when it came to firearms. And I started studying battlefield medicine because I wanted to be a doctor. And so I found it really interesting how medicine evolves, over centuries, which is like super gross, right? Early medicine's so gross, and I love it.
Give us an example.
Oh, do you want? Oh, really?
Yes, I want an example. Especially from you, because
it's pretty gross.
Go ahead.
It's pretty gross. Okay, so here's my favorite example that I say. This has nothing to do with guns, so we're going totally off the rails.
Cool.
I do this every time I'm at a nice steakhouse, and they bring you a dessert, and it's got gold on the top. So the body doesn't process gold. My understanding, I'm not a doctor. But so back in the early days of pills, they used to wrap pills in gold if you were rich, and in chocolate if you weren't rich. So people who were poor, they would take this chocolate pill, and the chocolate would dissolve, and the arsenic inside would kill them. So the pill would basically kill them. Rich people, however, had them encapsulated in gold. So because what people don't realize is that like medicine was killing you because you were using things like arsenic. You know? Yeah. And so the toxin that was inside the pill didn't dissolve in the body. So if the disease wasn't going to kill you, the pill also wasn't going to kill you. But it gets even grosser because they would pick it out.
And they'd use it again. Ew!
I told you it was gross. Okay. It's my favorite. I tell this at every nice steakhouse, like anytime, like we'll be at SHOT Show at this like bougie dinner with like owners of companies, and they'll bring it out and there'll be gold on something, and my husband Mark is like, oh no.
Here we go.
He's like, you want to hear a funny story? And he's just like, oh God, every single time. It's a great story though.
It is.
So early medicine, pretty gnarly.
That was
probably the nicest one. There's some other ones, but yeah. So I found it really interesting. But when you talk about battlefield medicine, you can't talk about that without obviously weapons and ammunition development. And so when I was younger, I spent a lot of time in Gettysburg because I grew up 3 hours from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and they talked about how the advancements of weapons technology, and in this case, ammunition technology, how that altered how medicine had to function on the battlefield. So with the Civil War, you get kind of the first, at least in the U.S., large-scale adoption of a conically shaped projectile. A lot of people call it the Minier ball, after Claude Etienne Minier, who developed it overseas. But actually, it was modified by a smith at Harper's Ferry named James Burton. So my old assistant and I, we call it the Burton ball. We're trying to take it back from France, and it's now the Burton ball, but most people call it the Minier ball. But it's this conically shaped projectile. And so there were more amputations during the Civil War than there were during the Revolution because of this projectile. I'm sure there was lots of factors, but this projectile was more likely to shatter bone than a round musket ball. So you now have, 100 years later, basically after the Revolution, technology's advanced, which means medical technology's advanced, but yet somehow you're getting a more grisly outcome. And so I thought that was really interesting. And so I changed my major to history. I started studying guns, but I had no hands-on experience with them until about 6 months later. I got my first internship at a military museum in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and basically there were guns, 200 guns from a collection, and I'd never held a gun before in my life, and I had to catalog them, so what they were, what had been modified, all that stuff, and that's how I got hooked.
Do you remember the first gun that you actually logged in and held?
I don't know for sure. I know an early one was the Remington Beals. Which is Remington's first, revolver, which is really cool, really neat gun. I know that was one of the early ones because it has stuck with me, but I don't know if it's the actual first one. But I do talk a lot about, in interviews, about an Enfield, a Civil War era Enfield that was on display at that museum, where the soldier had hand carved every battle that he fought in into the stock.
Damn.
And so when people ask me about my first real experience with guns, the abbreviated version is that once I got to my internship, seeing that kind of clicked in my brain a little bit, that this wasn't just a story about technology or medicine, that it was a story about people. For better or for worse, it's a story about people. And so that's really what kind of got me hooked on it and learning as much as I could. And I took an NRA First Steps class after that and learned how to shoot, and the rest is history.
Oh no, we're getting into that history because to me, you are the most successful female in the gun industry, and it's because you went a completely different route than what we usually see women do. So one, it's refreshing to always see you paving the paths that you do. One, two, your age, you're younger than most of the people in the industry.
I'm getting older.
I still don't know exactly what age you are.
You want to guess?
35.
36.
Oh,
Good. That was good.
Okay. Close.
Yeah, no, it's funny because and the only reason I say that is I'm so used to being the youngest person in the room.
Same, yeah.
And I had a conference that I was running last year, and I went to make a comment like that, to that extent. And I looked around and I was like, oh, no, I am no longer the youngest person in the room. And I just started working on a project up in Canada, and that person is 2 years younger than me. And I'm like, oh, no, the tides.
It's crazy, isn't it? Like, one day, yeah, everybody's 10, 20 years older than you. Next time you look around and it's like, oh, I'm getting called Unc now. I'm like, whoa, what? Like,
I'm not getting called Unc, so not yet.
Wow, so you've done a lot. How did you decide to make this like your life thing? Like, history and guns has been, and you've taken it to so many different aspects.
Yeah.
And then down so many different avenues. So like, the whole curator part.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Because you essentially built the Cody Firearms Museum too, right?
Yeah, I rebuilt it. So it's been around for a long time, but we gutted it and renovated it. So the pathway beyond my first internship, I just kind of am the kind of person that if I decide I want to do something, I dive headfirst into it. Like, no looking back, no consequence. So when I wanted to be a doctor when I was younger, in high school, I volunteered in an ER and I shadowed an orthopedic surgeon in and out of the OR. So it was kind of always like trying to get myself to a point where I could get into school or like, my resume would look good. And then I changed my major to history and I was like, well, crap, I got nothing. So I kind of just went like full into it and did every internship, volunteer, class. I did everything I could to learn about firearms because it's not easy to study guns in academia, mainly for the fact that there are no peers. There's no one teaching it unless it's more of a public health, politically charged thing. So I kind of had to make my own way. When I was in school, I did a lot of independent studies with people that weren't firearms history people necessarily, but they were military historians or they were kind of tangentially involved. And becoming curator, my first curatorial job, like real job, because I started at the Smithsonian's National Firearms Collection as a researcher. But the first time I went into kind of the curatorial professional role was at Cody, and that was, I graduated with my master's, and then I went to Cody. I'd been coming back and forth between the Smithsonian and Cody for years, but not like full time. And I was the assistant curator, and then I was promoted to curator in 2015, so I was 20, math, I was in my early 20s, which is wild.
Right.
Nobody that young runs museums, let alone like the premier gun museum in the country. But for me, it was just finding a niche. So there's a firearm or related artifact probably in every museum in the country. Firearms are incredibly prevalent in museums, but there are very, very few people who study them. So you ended up getting this kind of weirdness where you had people trained in museums that had no knowledge of firearms, and then you had firearms being such a prominent artifact in museums. So when the museum people didn't have, sorry, I went on a little roller coaster there. When the museum people didn't have the gun training, you saw gun people in museums that had no museum training. And it was kind of, when you'd see those displays, they were by the collector for the collector. So if you didn't know about guns, if you weren't like in on this like lingo, then you didn't really have any like grand takeaways from the exhibition. And so I was a person that knew about guns and also knew about museums. So I just kind of found a good niche, and there weren't really a lot of people, so by process of elimination it was just me.
So how do you find guns to put in museums? Like you said, you buy collections, but like how do you even, is there like a database where people list their collections? Or
okay, that would be called a registry, and I think the gun people don't like that. It's what I hear. I
mean, I'm talking about like similar to like Gunbroker or something like that. Is there like a Gunbroker for collectors to sell to like
so it's my
researchers or colleges like that?
No,
Okay.
not anything that formal. So when I was at Cody, we had an amazing collection. We had 7,000 firearms. So we actually weren't like actively acquiring stuff. And a lot of museums don't have money to do that. Like a lot of people will be like, oh, just get the museum to buy it. And I'm like, what museum do you know that is just like rolling in cash? A lot of times museums take the term nonprofit a little bit too seriously. But yeah, I mean, you can look to the auction houses for a lot of that. YouTube has made it a lot easier to kind of find collections because people like Ian McCollum, go to nights down in Florida, go to Rock Island Auction or go to Morphe's or whatever, and they kind of highlight these collections. But in terms of actively looking for collections, you kind of just have to know who the players are, get involved in the collector world. I mean, I'm in multiple collector groups, so I know where collections are, but it's just kind of like a in the know world. But with more YouTube and more online avenues, I think we really showcase a lot more collections that have been seen before. But a lot of people with big gun collections, understandably, try to keep it private, right? Because they don't want to get robbed or anything. And so, yeah, you kind of just have to know. It's not great. It's not great advice if you want to get in the field. Just have to know, and I can't tell you how you know.
I'm just asking because curiosity. Yeah. It's just a fascinating portion of what you do. Is like, how do you even get these guns here? But cool. Keep going. Your pathway of becoming a curator up until now.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I became curator in 2015 of Cody. And one thing when I first came to Cody, you mentioned the renovation. So I was responsible for every single facet of the Cody Firearms Museum renovation, which was completely gutting the museum and replacing it, fundraising it, writing it, selecting the objects. I had a team, and I was responsible for the whole thing. So when I came to Cody as an assistant, so when I came out full-time as an assistant curator, we had Cody, Wyoming hosted this big event that used to happen called Shooting Industry Masters. It was so much fun. And it was like hundreds of people from the gun industry came to a different location every year. It was put on by National Shooting Sports Foundation and FMG Publications, which doesn't exist anymore. And it was a multi-day shoot. It was a fun shoot. It had a theme. And it was a combination of like executives and salespeople and all the different people that worked in the companies and pro shooters. So the year I graduated, 2013, and moved out to Cody full-time, we hosted it. Cody did. And I will never forget it. It was the most horrifying thing on the planet because I had been told by the previous curator, my boss at the time and time again, oh, the Cody Firearms Museum is a really big deal and everybody knows who it is, what it is and all this stuff. And so I just assumed that was true. And it is a big deal, and it was a big deal, but it lived on a legacy for a really long time without any active promotion. So I was standing in the lower level of the museum, the old museum, and I was talking to an executive from Olin, or Winchester Ammunition, and a little background on Cody. So it was 5 museums under one roof. The Firearms Museum, though, specifically got its start because the Olin Foundation, which is Winchester Ammunition, who owns the Winchester name. So Winchester Repeating Arms licenses the name. They use the name, but Olin's the one that owns it. So the executive from the Olin Foundation / Winchester Ammo is looking around and was like, wow, I didn't even know this was here. And I was like, oh, well, that's awkward because this museum doesn't exist without Winchester Ammunition because you gave us 4,000 firearms back in the 70s, or you loaned them to us in the 70s, you gave them to us in the 80s. And so the fact that the company that started the museum had no idea we even existed was the most horrifying moment in my life, because here I am thinking this is like something that people know about. And trust me, like older gun guys, people knew who it was, but like how does the company that started it have no idea it even existed? And that's when I realized we had a serious PR issue. And so I went to the executive director at the time and I said, hey, do you mind if I start promoting this? And I went into aggressive promotion of the museum. And so I went to SHOT Show and I did TV and I did all these things just so that it would say, Cody Firearms Museum on the lower third of all these things. And as that happened, I started getting approached about consulting jobs, other museums, other collectors, that kind of thing. And I asked the center, which is the overarching organization, if that would be okay. If I could do some consulting on the side. They said yes, because that also is marketing. So I started, my first consulting gig was with C.M. Russell Art Museum in Montana, which is home to the Matthew S. Browning collection. And so I started working on that. I actually worked there for with them on and off for 10 years. And so I started doing these consulting pieces. And then by the time we reopened the museum in 2019, I left as curator in 2020. I stayed on for one more year to kind of help with the transition till 2021. So I stayed on as a consultant after that. And so I just started consulting full time because I had already built up, this kind of client list because the center was gracious enough to let me do it because it ultimately helped the overall, image of the museum. And so, and now I'm working on everything from museums, which I've got a lot of cool projects on that, which we can talk about if you want. I've got the research center in Wyoming. I am starting a research center. We're already offering fellowships in the UK called the Center for the Study of Arms History.
Oh,
Center.
So you're taking the Second Amendment internationally now?
See, no, because it's weapons. Because it's not the Second Amendment, around the world.
Gun history and education.
Weapons history. Yeah. I always say weapons, even though I hate using, because I think weapons and firearms is not necessarily the same thing, because not all firearms are made as weapons. They can be used as weapons, but they weren't made for that purpose. So right. I tend to make that distinction. But for the sake of brevity, which is not my strong suit, I'm saying weapons because it's everything from stone tools to guided missiles. This research center, and it has nothing to do with politics. We don't do politics at all. It's technology. Right. So we're working on that. I'm working on that. And then, so it's museums, research centers. I do expert witness testimony. I do expert witness work for both gun companies, and then also I've done a lot of Second Amendment work as well. TV, I still do a lot of TV and interviews and media and writing and producing for TV. And I'm probably missing something, but it basically, I got my start in Cody, and then it's kind of
taking you everywhere.
All these different, I said once in an interview, if it has something to do with firearms and history, I probably have a hand in it. And then I was like, that was really douchey.
But it's true.
It's not wrong, but you should, those are inside thoughts. The history stuff is a lot of people don't know it or think they know it. There's a lot of misinformation out there from both people who are passionate about firearms and then people who also are supposed to know about it in academia. The lack of information, correct information, is pretty staggering.
So how frustrating is that for you to hear talking points, even from the pro-gun side, that are just that's not true at all? What's the most common one that you hear that you get frustrated with the most?
That's a good question. But you mentioned the pro-gun talking points. Sometimes I laugh because, obviously, both sides of anything, they have to synthesize, complicated topics down into talking points. And sometimes I'll, say things, and then I always hear myself, I always hear the talking point version of it, and I'm like, stop trying to help me. You're not helping. I think the one that I love talking about the most, because it gets people so mad, and I don't know who your audience is, but someone will get mad at me. Assault rifle is a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know.
Matter of fact, I don't know what I was doing, but I texted you for the actual definition that one day.
Okay,
and I was like, what's the real meaning of assault rifle?
You were testifying or something, and you were like, where's the
origins? Yes, that's what it was.
So this gets me, I used to have this web channel for recoil, and I was holding this really cool gun. It's called the Burton Light Machine Rifle. It was developed 1917, 1918. There's only one. It's a Cody. And it is a selective fire rifle with an intermediate cartridge, 2 twin top detachable magazines, and so it is by all definition an assault rifle.
Right.
And so I had an STG-44 on the table, and I had the Burton, and I was like, today we're going to talk about assault rifles, and I skipped the STG and I picked up the Burton. And I got a text from Dave Merrill with Recoil not long after it landed. He was, oh my God, I had no idea. People don't know what an assault rifle and what an assault weapon are.
Right.
So that one is probably the one that I get the most, it's frustrating for me because I get what people are saying, right? It's, doesn't assault you, therefore it's not, a thing. The reality is, and I say this all the time, just because you don't agree with the term doesn't make it not exist.
Right.
You don't have to use it, but it is a historical term. And so assault rifle as a historical term under the Defense Intelligence Agency is a single user portable, selective fire, intermediate cartridge rifle with a detachable magazine. There's a few other designations, but those are the big ones. That is the historic definition for it. That is I was going to say legal definition, but California uses the term. They changed the definition of it. So that is
real quick question. How are they able to change definitions like that?
It's because there's the definition that the gun world historians know, and then there's legal definitions, and it's just different. It's like if you go to I don't use ATF definitions in my work because they change. They can change with whatever the different legal challenges are. So you can say what you want and call it that and define it that, and that's but that's different than the historical definitions. So An assault rifle is a thing. It is a selective fire gun. It is not an assault weapon. An assault weapon, actually, in a more complicated term, I always say an assault weapon is a legislative catch-all term to typically mean semi-automatic center fire, although not always, rifles that have certain features. Basically, they look like assault rifles, but they're not selective fire. But California's got there's like revolving shotguns, I think, are on it. So there's other things on the list that don't fit that mold. But I will also say that assault weapon actually has a historically rooted definition as well, as like an attachment to certain guns. Assault is a style of fighting.
I was gonna say, isn't assaulter an actual position in the military?
I don't know assaulter per se, but I do know that assault's, like, I know that there's like a definition, as I've seen the manual where they're calling it the assault style. I almost said style. That's so another definition. But people get really, really upset about this conversation between assault weapon, assault rifle. And like I said, I think New Jersey also uses assault firearm, and I think California does use assault rifle, but they use it as a semi-automatic definition. I could be wrong, those things change. But I think my favorite angry person about this, I was doing an interview for PBS when Cody was opening, and I was standing in our Polymer Revolution section, which was obviously talking about the transitions in materials in the post-World War II period that leads to the AR and a bunch of other things. And I'm standing in front of a case of AR-15s, and I am talking about assault rifles and the definitions, because I literally have a label that talks about assault weapon, assault rifle, modern sporting rifle. What are they? So we were talking about it. This woman, interestingly, in the comments was like, how dare you, you're an idiot, there's no such thing as an assault rifle, how dare you talk about, machine guns in front of a case full of AR-15s, basically I'm just this horrible person. Ironically, I was standing in front of a case full of AR-15s that are selective fire, because the first AR-15s were selective fire. Now, I wasn't saying in the interview, because that would have been way too in the weeds, but it was funny that of all the things she got mad at me, she was actually wrong, because the AR-15s behind me were selective fire. And I even tried to tell her that, and she didn't want to hear it. She was like, nope, you're wrong. And I was like, okay, never mind. So I think the assault weapon, assault rifle, that part, that frustrates me probably the most, only because it comes down to like this fight of like, oh, it's not real because it doesn't make sense as a term. And I'm like, lots of things don't make sense as terms. So it doesn't mean they don't have a historical lineage, and assault rifle does.
Got you. So it's people trying to play semantics that they don't even really understand themselves.
Exactly. So I don't hate semantics, make no mistake,
Right.
But obviously I just gave a lot of really complicated definitions. But if you don't they don't even know why they don't like it. And that comes down to talking points that they hear other people saying, and they're like, oh, assault rifles aren't real, and anyone that possibly disagrees with me is wrong.
Right.
And that's frustrating.
All right, a byproduct of lazy politics. We could go down a whole rabbit hole about that. But, yeah. Okay, cool. So you start doing all of this back end work. What inspired you to take the PR way and just keep going? Because like you've mentioned, I think you've been on TV since I've known you. So it's like,
I've been doing TV since I went to Cody, because I don't know if you can tell, but I'm not no white guy. So
right.
I did a lot of TV.
So you mentioned that
no
very
offense to all white guys, but when you're a novelty.
Right. You mentioned it very casually, but like you said, oh, I went and did TV. How do you just go and do TV?
Yeah, that is not great. So being at the Cody Firearms Museum, it is, if you Google like gun history, gun collections, it comes up. So the first TV show I think I ever did was Gun Talk. I did the radio show and the TV show because Tom Gresham knew the collection. Because people who are passionate about firearms history knew about Cody. It's just a lot of like the companies and the more modern gun owners didn't. And Tom obviously knew about the museum. And so Tom reached out, and I can't remember if I did the radio show or the TV show, which one came first. But so that's how I first did it, because they wanted to come out and do some episodes with historic guns in the collection. So I started there. But yeah, like it became like, if you're a producer and you don't know a lot about it, if you're a producer in the gun world, then you usually did know about the Cody, just because like it was a great place to film B-roll and all that. But even in the non-gun world, if you look up, firearms history, Cody is one of the top things that came up. And one of the top things that come up with Cody, especially now, is me. And if you're a producer and you're trying to pitch something for history, or you're trying to, cast something for history or Discovery or Nat Geo, and you see it's a girl and you see it's, exactly the topic you want, then yeah, I never sought it out initially.
Right.
I don't know if I really seek it out now, but it was just kind of like because of the Cody, people found me through that, and then now people find me elsewhere. I honestly, it's terrible. I started telling people, I'm like, just Google Ashley and firearms history. That's all you need to do. 'Cause my last name is really complicated, so I'm like, just Google Ashley and guns and gun history, and I'll probably pop.
Wow. Okay. So, what TV shows what productions have you been on?
Okay, so
Have you made it to a movie yet?
On a movie?
Yeah, like in a.
No. I was trying to think if I did any really long documentaries that would be considered movie length, but I think everything I've done is an hour, is episodic. So a Gun Talk, Outdoor Channel's Gun Stories with Joe Mantegna. I've been on 10 seasons. New season airing now, on Wednesdays. I've been on 10 seasons of Gun Stories. I'm going to forget things, but I've done Nat Geo. I used to be on Mysteries at the Museum all the time. That was on Travel Channel before they went all spooky. And they got bought by Discovery, and then they converted Travel to be exclusively paranormal to give Zach Baggins a place because he was so popular. So Nat Geo, Travel, Discovery. I had a show on Discovery for a hot minute called Master of Arms. I was one of the judges. And then
Is that the one you did with Zeke?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was really fun to film. I don't love the way it turned out. A lot of people liked it. It got great ratings. Great being relative, but it got really good ratings. It's difficult for ratings in today's society, but there was a lot of factors that go into renewal, and it's not just that. And so I did that. And then, I don't know, I've done a lot of behind the scenes. So I've been a producer on Gun Stories. I was a consulting producer on Brothers in Arms, which was a very short-lived History Channel show at the same time as my show on Master of Arms. That was with Eli Double Tap. I don't actually know him. I never met any of them. I don't think, and Rocco Vargas. I don't think they have any idea who I am, but I was behind the scenes, like in the early days of their show. I was a writer-producer on a show they tried to use as a reboot of Top Shot on History Channel called Mountain Men, Ultimate Marksman. That only lasted a season. I can talk for days about why gun programming works and why it doesn't work on major networks, but I did that one.
I want to know.
Okay. So I did a bunch of other ones too. So it's really complicated. When you get to networks like Discovery or History, you do have a core audience that is usually interested in firearms. The demographic of those networks a lot of times, skew older, white male, whether it's history or like you can see with like Discovery Channel with like the popularity of Gold Rush or there's that one where they're out in the woods. Maybe it's Alaska Last Frontier.
Yep.
So you can see
even like American Pickers. Same demographic.
Same demographic. So obviously that is a demographic that's going to be really interested in gun programming. And the networks know that, and they're like, okay, gun programming will do well. Let's do a gun program. But a lot of things happen that I think are to the detriment of the success of a good program. And that is, look at the success of American Guns and Sons of Guns, the two ones that I would say were the most popular, both riddled in scandal, and both, there are, I think the one guy who was like tangentially involved had the FFL, I think, for Sons of Guns is great. But, the gun people are like, kind of like, what? So they either hire people that they think their audience is going to like, and then those people end up being criminals in the sake of some of those shows. Alleged. I'm gonna say alleged because I don't actually remember all the details of it. But yeah, so what ends up happening is so they either hire people that they think are legit and aren't as legit, which I feel like is probably every discipline, but they don't understand the audience and the topic well enough, and so they spend money to create a show, and then they almost impede the success of the show with their own lack of knowledge. For example, with Master of Arms, I feel like enough times passed that I can talk about this. But like, there was a shooting right before one of our episodes that was supposed to be on the American long rifle. And the network panicked and changed the episode to being a sword episode. Joan of Arc was a Joan of Arc episode. So they swapped the episode because they thought an episode on the American long rifle would be offensive because there was a shooting that week. And that to me just shows a complete disconnect in the understanding of the audience, but then also the topic, because what an American long rifle has to do with a mass shooting, with, some type of semi-automatic rifle, there's nothing. And gun people who watch that stuff don't see that connection. So it was a non-issue. They made an issue because of how they felt, which is fine. Their feelings are valid, but their knee-jerk reaction isn't necessarily reflective of the knee-jerk reaction of the audience. So what ended up happening with that, they changed the episode, which is whatever, but the TV guide, the guide channel didn't change the episode. For the rest of the season, we were airing the wrong episodes in the wrong order, and it confused the heck out of people. So that one decision that made sense to some people, didn't make sense to the audience, and now it confused the audience for the next 7 weeks. So stuff like that. I was dealing with a show where I was, trying to give advice on what historic guns to go with. The armorer they hired disagreed, and he was wrong. And so they ended up going with guns that were historically inaccurate, because they didn't want to use a certain time frame, even though that was the time frame the show was about. And so, but they were like, oh, well, this person says it, we can't use those and I don't know why he did that. I never talked to him, but I know that was the issue. So now you have a historic firearm show that people are tuning into that are going to know if it's wrong, and you have the wrong era firearms being portrayed because of a decision that was made behind the scenes that people didn't think was anyone was going to notice. So then those people are like, well, that's not right. These people don't know what they're talking about. So it's this interesting culture of we know that this programming would do well, but then little things happen along the way and decisions are made along the way that makes the show not something the actual audience wants to see. And then a lot of times the networks will pull a show if there is a mass shooting. And so they'll panic about something, pull the show or do something. And then it's this crazy cycle that I think is easily rectified. It's just difficult. There's so many layers in the networks. And I don't even know to this day, because I used to say all the time to showrunners, just let me talk to them, right? Let me talk to them. And they don't, because of all the different protective layers in the networks, they don't, let you talk to them. And so then, they don't get good information, so then they make the decisions based on the information they have, and it's not always right for the show, and then that ends up, I think, contributing to the viewership decline of the show. So
wow,
yeah,
that's good to know.
I've thought about it a lot. And the thing is that the other issue you get is sometimes get gun people trying to consult on the show, and they don't understand how TV works, in the sense of I've got 23 minutes, right? I can't tell every story. And so then you get the people they'll work with that only want every single detail, and then they write those people off because they don't understand that in order to get a show out, you have to, you don't have to make it inaccurate, but you have to condense it, and some people can't do that. Wow. I love it. I love working on TV programs. I'll continue to work on TV programs. I'll continue to take risks, because you never know in the edit, if they'll make you say something historically inaccurate, not on purpose, but just from lack of knowledge, which is why I try to be a producer on shows I'm on now. I wasn't on Discovery on the Master of Arms. I was just talent, and our showrunner was great, and he gave us lots of, we had lots of leeway, we had lots of input, but when it came to decision making, we weren't a part of that, especially post-production. We weren't a part of that. And I mean, even I was in New York when they were in post-pro for that show, and I just stopped by to say hi, and they were like, oh, look at this. And they showed me something, and I was like, why is the lock plate on that gun on the wrong side? And they were like, what? And it was because the film people had reversed the image. And so I was like, but it was something just as simple as that, right? Where in 1 second I fixed something people would have seen as a major issue, that they never would have seen had I not just randomly been in New York that day.
And I think we've talked about this in length off camera a lot, is there's really no avenue to be a consultant for production. It's really you have to know somebody that gets you into the industry, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe there is, and I don't know, but I mean, for me...
if there was, I assume you would know that avenue, but...
Maybe not. But no, I mean, yeah, you do kind of have to know somebody, put your name out there. And, for me, it was through being on camera, and then people found me for other projects and other things. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you could pound the pavement and know nobody and like walk into networks or email the media inquiries and stuff, and maybe someone would get back to you. But definitely knowing somebody to get you there, but then also knowing that they're probably not going to listen to you much anyways. But I'll take their money.
So you're 36 because you volunteered that information.
I volunteered that information.
You've done all of this in the gun industry up until now. A lot of the times I judge, especially the older crowd, of like, all right, you've been doing this for so long, eventually you're gonna transcend and ascend into different areas. Is there anyone coming up after you that you're excited about that's gonna be able to do stuff similar to you? Sounds like a no.
I mean, not what I'm doing per se. I mean, there's other people who study history that are colleagues of mine that are fantastic. We all just kind of find our own, niches. The younger people working at Cody, obviously, Danny, who was my assistant curator, who's now curator of Cody. I mean, Danny's work is great. He hits a different audience than I do a lot. He's he's a tall, quiet, kind of reserved guy, really funny though. And he hits more of like your I would say your See an Arsenal type crowd, right? And he does like your Reddit crowd, like he's very popular with that. And his staff, Jathan and Tyler, great. They had an intern. I don't know who it is. I haven't met her yet, but I hear she was really good. I think she's working for Springfield Armory, not sure which one.
Okay.
Because I actually wanted to hire her to help me with a couple of things, but she took a full-time job, and I couldn't offer a full-time job. But nobody seems to be doing it'd be difficult to do exactly what I do, because what I do doesn't make sense. But I'm sure there are people, and I'm forgetting them, and I feel terrible, but no one that's doing a lot of different things. But yeah, I think I'm in this world. I think I'm still one of the youngest. Sure. That's actually like going around and doing whatnot, other than colleagues of mine. We're all kind of the same age or a little bit older, but I'll keep an eye out.
Okay. I was just asking. I like to ask to see if there's anyone in that next generation that's going to come up and take up the mantle of actually preserving the Second Amendment in the different ways that we do it. You know what I mean?
When it comes to like Second Amendment stuff, which I see my work being different than that.
It transcends.
There's lots of younger people doing that, although I don't really know who the players are per se. But I see like on my socials and stuff, lots of younger people kind of, standing up and talking, and they're very eloquent in it. But in my particular field, I don't think I know of anyone just yet. And if you are one of those people that I'm supposed to know, and I've forgotten you, I am really sorry. But that's why I've got the research centers, because that's the point, is to get more people.
That's actually what I was about to get into, is you, even though you say you haven't seen them, you were starting to take your education to more campuses, and you established it at a college. So there's only a certain amount of time before somebody walks in there and is like, hey.
Yeah. Second, when it
I've
comes
been
to
watching you for a while. I want to be like you.
Terrifying. In terms of like Second Amendment law students and lawyers, there are some really good up and coming scholars. They're not doing what I'm doing per se, but they're doing really good research. But that's more for like Second Amendment legal courtroom battles, which is important. And so yeah, there are several people that are really up and coming in that world.
Got you. So how have you seen the gun industry change over the last 10 years that you've been in it, with the influx of social media? And let's just start there. We'll just stop there. The influx of social media, and I guess it being a more prevalent and known industry now, whereas before it was very, very, very niche.
I still think it's really niche.
Oh, it is. It is.
I would say that, It's still massively frustrating because, you know, there's so much good information, so much good content out there, and no one sees it if you're not already in the group. You know, if you're not already in the community, no one really sees it. And so, like, I always, you know, people have these grand thoughts and ideas, and they put all this kind of stuff together, and I'm like, well, yeah, but if no one outside of the gun world sees it, what's the point? Which I think that if I'm criticizing the industry, I think that is a big issue of finding a way to be more accessible to people on the fence. I think that a lot of times the gun community comes off as really scary to people who might be on the fence. And, you know, and people could say, screw it, I want it to be scary. But the reality is that it's you know, the group has to grow. And if you scare away everybody that isn't exactly like you, you know, it's not great. But I would say that one area that, and I know this is something that's, you know, also dear to your heart, that the industry is starting to come around to is with mental health and suicide prevention. It's gotten a lot better. You know, you do have companies like NSSF acknowledging suicide prevention initiatives. You've got, you know, different orgs that are willing to talk about it. You've got more grassroots efforts that are, you know, coming up. And I think that the fact that we're able to talk about that more is a big deal because, you know, death by suicide makes up of 2/3 of gun deaths in the country, and the people killing themselves with guns are gun owners. And if we feel like we can't talk about it in the community, we're not doing anything to help people. So I think that in the last 10 years has been actually a really nice thing to see, because years ago, before I got involved, I'm on the board of Walk the Talk America. Before I got involved with WTTA, I remember getting I have bipolar 2 disorder and PTSD. And I remember getting my diagnosis and then being in my kitchen and hearing an advertisement for USCCA. They have since made sure that they have made sure that this is no longer in circulation. This was a while ago, many years ago. And it was this ad that was like, you don't want crazy people to have guns. It kind of like those like wacky inflatable like flaily art guy or whatever. Like that's what kind of was like, you know, crazy people shouldn't own guns. You don't want crazy people to own guns. You know, that'd be crazy. Like it was like a 10-second ad, and I swear they said like crazy like 20 times. And I was like, what?
Who thought of this?
Like I was like, that's horrible. And I'm not an overly sensitive person, but I was like, that's awful. Like I get the like I get what you were trying to say, but that's awful. And I emailed Mike and Jake actually that night, and because I had met them through a mutual friend, and I was like, all right, we had to have a conversation because nobody knew I had bipolar disorder, and I was like, we gotta have a conversation about this. Like that was not okay. And I did a podcast with them and kind of came out as somebody who has mental illness, and I brought it up on my social media because I was tired of gun people being like, oh my God, you know, I love what you do. You're such a, you know, a good spokesperson in the gun community. If we could just keep guns out of crazy people's hands, then everything would be better. And I'm like,
I'm one of those crazy people.
Exactly. I say that all the time. I'm one of those crazy people. And it's still, trust me, it's still bad. I mean, it's still not great. I can't tell you how many, especially recently, conservative commentators, like on Instagram and like, you know, TikTok and stuff, where they'll be like, you know, listen, I know I don't want a crazy person to have a gun. And I'm like, how freaking tone deaf, you know, how somebody can be, and I've actually written articles about this, about how gun owners are obsessed with nuance, right? Like, oh, that's not a clip, that's a magazine. Oh, that, you know, but yet you say, you know, people with mental illness shouldn't own guns, and that is equally as complicated as saying, you know, guns should be banned, you know? Right. And, you know, the reality is only 3% of all people with diagnosed severe mental illness, I think, I might be messing with that statistic, is even considered prone to violence. Or partakes in violent crime, or something like that. And it's usually with a compounding factor of like addiction, domestic violence, you know, and so it's like, you know, if a crowd of people who are so passionate about nuance, you know, turns their back on their own community, the people who are struggling, and just blanket, you know, whitewashes them as mental illness bad, you shouldn't own guns, and when it's far more complicated than that. And so I would say that it's gotten a lot better. It's not quite there, and I've noticed it kind of recently, especially with some of the recent, you know, things that have gone on, like the crazy people lingo is starting to creep back in, but it's not coming from the gun world per se. It's coming from more like political commentators who cover a range of issues, which is kind of making me sad, but hopefully it'll balance itself out at some point. But that's where I think the industry is at least doing better.
Yeah, I agree. To that point, Mike and I stopped at 2 gun stores on the way here. I had to do my paperwork for a new gun, and then he was trying to find refreshments, and the liquor store was right next to the gun store, to be honest. So he went in there, I went into the gun store, just wait for him. And both settings, we had very in-depth conversations about guns and mental health, and both places took the flyers and put them right on their front displays.
Oh, so, that's awesome.
Yeah. I told Mike, I was like, man, a lot of this like guerrilla warfare outreach is probably what we need to do more of.
Yeah.
And, like, talk to these people firsthand. But no, I agree. I think we're getting better. How has your experience been in the industry as a woman?
Mine's been okay. I used to say that I used to feel like I got, if I had any hesitancy towards me, it was less about being a woman. It was more about how young I was and how young I looked, because I looked really young. Like, I was young and I looked.
You still do.
Well, you thought I was 35 and you were spot on. So I must not look that young.
I've known you, though.
Yeah. No, so I would say that a lot of times it was more about my age than anything else, or my perceived age, because I mean, oh gosh, I'm only 5 feet tall, right? Like, so even, people who are small are automatically often assumed to be younger. And so I would say in the industry, being a woman, it's been fine, for the most part. I mean, yeah, you get your like little ladies and you're so beautiful, and sorry, I actually like getting compliments, so please don't not compliment me because I just said it like that. But you get your little ladies, you get all that, like, what's a pretty little thing? That was actually a thing that happened to me. I was doing the PBS interview, and I was saying how the gun world has actually really been great to me as a woman, as an expert in my field. And then I walked up with them and we were filming, and this random dude in the museum was like, "What's a pretty little thing like you doing in a place like this?" And I was like, "No, stop trying to help me," right? So those things would happen, but those were always just like words, I always said that, if anybody looked they were hesitant about me being the person, being the messenger, within a few minutes, people were convinced that I knew what I was talking about. When I had just been hired as curator, a board member was walking me around a gun show, and he was like, "This is Ashley. She's the new curator of the Cody Firearms Museum." And he said to the board member, like, "It sounds like a political hire." And I didn't hear him, but he said that. And I get it. I guess I'm just more like, I don't get offended that easily. So like, it is the way the world is, and it's not going to change until they see contrary, And so he had said that. And then fortunately for me, because I know a lot about guns, but I don't know everything, there was a collection of guns that I actually had worked intensely with at the Smithsonian. Thank God. So I was like, oh. So I started like, blah, 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 about these Marshall pistols and the Edmund Bitter collection. And he was like, "Oh, nope, I was wrong." Like, he was like, "I was completely wrong. I lucked out that I actually knew about the gun sitting in front of him, because there were plenty of tables where I wouldn't have been able to do much." And that was always it was this quick response. And like I said, I don't honestly know of, other than, a personal thing I had in Wyoming, which was not about like the grander scheme of the gun community. I've actually had very positive experiences.
Good to hear.
And I know, though, from hearing friends of mine who come from like marketing or sales in the industry, that is not necessarily the case all the time. But at least in my world, I'm enough of an anomaly that, I'm enough of an anomaly that they at least listen for an extra second before they pass complete judgment. At least that's knock on wood. But
I think you scare a lot of people, honestly.
I'm really scary.
Yeah. I think you intimidate a lot of people that don't know more than 3-syllable words.
I talk really fast, too, if you haven't been able to tell. And that actually is a benefit, because I can say a lot before somebody can interrupt me.
Right.
Which I actually use as a tactic a lot of time in media, with media training. Because it's, a lot of times news media will try to interrupt you at a moment so that they can either interrupt your thought or stop you before if you do your, butt clause, right? Like, this is this. And if that sounds really bad, but then the back half of what you were going to say was, make it make sense. They just cut you off there, so they didn't get to say the actual point. So it's a media thing too. But I can say a lot of history really fast before someone can interrupt me or be snarky or anything. And so by that point, they're like, never mind. So that's helpful. Talk fast. East Coast. I was constantly in Wyoming told to slow down my rate of speech. Didn't work.
Listen faster. That's all I can tell you. If it was me with a checklist, it's like, she's done everything in the gun industry. So where are you going to take the gun industry next? More than what else are you going to accomplish in the gun industry?
I want to build a museum at every gun company in America. You should. The history is important. Yeah. You said 1 to 3 years, and 1 to 3 years. I mean, I'm working on several active museum projects that will be done in 1 to 3 years. I would say the next thing that I'm looking to do is pay a lawyer to set up real business structure, not just like me as a single member LLC, and start hiring people to do my work. I'm ready to retire. No, like, it can't just be me. I was just talking to someone about this when it came to expert witness stuff. It can't just be me, right? Like, who is the next generation? But like me working on the projects that I do, I'm like the Energizer Bunny a lot of the time, but I can't, it's not sustainable. I can't keep doing this. And so like, I want to create a bigger company that, has different departments. So all the different things that I say I do in the history world that coincides with guns have different divisions for that. And bring on my colleagues, bring on new people, and just make it bigger, so that it's not just me. It's cultivating a whole new generation of people that can do this work, because history is important to the companies, and it's not just important because it makes you feel good, right? But the preservation of history is very important. It also teaches you how not to repeat issues. You save money if you know what you did before and why it didn't work. And you know what? From a Second Amendment perspective, it is now the most important determinant for determining whether a gun law can stay or not, can stand or not. So it's essential, and it should grow. And right now, the narrative of history is mostly in the hands of traditional academia and the university system, and they are usually very, very misinformed about how guns actually function, what guns are actually about. They control the narrative, even though it's wrong. And that's not a statement on their conclusions of historical facts, because we can always disagree on historical facts. Their historical facts are wrong. And so it can't just be me. So I want to find a way to make it bigger than me and bring in people and encourage people to be doing the same work I'm doing on a grander scale.
That's a perfect answer.
Thanks.
You know what else? You don't say like ever.
I don't?
No.
I used to say I didn't. And then I did a 2-hour interview with Ted Koppel years ago, and he scared the crap out of me. And I developed an
Did you?
Yeah, I developed an I developed a flinch, if you will, because I was so scared and I was so nervous in that interview. And he's actually wonderful, and he apologized for the interview, because it was one of these things where he was on assignment to do something, and I was working with a different part of that show, and nobody told him what segment I was working on, and I thought he was working on the same segment I was, and it just was like the interview never aired because he didn't get me saying anything political, which is what his segment was going to be, and because I didn't say anything political, he couldn't use me, and so it was a complete mix-up, and I have no ill will towards him, but I did develop a flinch for sure from it. And then I did a gun stories with one of the directors, a showrunner, and I said, now I'm gonna, I had him interrupt me because we were in the museum and I could stay as late as I wanted because I ran the museum. So I said, okay, as long as you don't mind, every time I use or a filler word or do this flinch, I was like, stop me, I want to start over. And we did that for probably for hours, and I got rid of it pretty good.
Reps.
Yeah. Exactly. Muscle memory of the tongue.
Yeah, there you go. So, expert witness. You're like the expert witness for Second Amendment cases,
Not
right?
anymore.
I mean, you were.
I'm retired.
Right, but you were the number one.
No, I wouldn't say I was the number one. There are lots.
I don't know, Ashley.
They're different. They're different kinds of experts. So like
that
I
too,
did
by
a
the
lot of historical. What's that?
I made that into the trash can.
Oh,
but go ahead.
that's impressive, actually. There are different types of historical expert witnesses. So, like, when it comes to, like, firearms laws, Clayton Kramer is one of the top people that we go to. He's published several books. And one of the interesting things about Clayton is that he's independently wealthy, so he doesn't actually take money for these cases, which is really invaluable when it comes to determining bias in an expert, or
right.
you know, where the money flow is coming from. I always butcher his last name, but Matt LaRosiere. I don't know if you've ever encountered him. I think he's down in Atlanta. He was with FBC for a while. He was an expert, very, very good. There's several really good experts in the legal, like, history side of things. But yeah, when it came to, like, if you needed someone to talk about technology, like historic technology, I was predominantly the person.
So that was a roundabout way of saying, yes, you were, but to give somebody else a little bit of a shout out too. It's okay. Tell me how.
I don't know if the lawyers appreciate my work. I don't know.
I do.
Yeah.
I can definitely tell you that. And honestly, like, without you, I feel like the Second Amendment could be on life support if you weren't doing what you were doing now.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I don't know about that.
We've both been in a lot of state capitals, listening to a lot of people testify, and it's like, yeah, without people like you, we're pretty much stale. I tried to say that I spoke at the Women's for Gun Rights meeting, and my entire speech was about, hey, everybody in here is old, and that's the problem. I just told them, like, you keep yelling 1776, like, here's a perfect example. Where were black people during 1776, guys?
Yeah.
And they were all like, oh. I'm like, yeah, let's try to find new talking points. But
yeah. Although that is one of the best talking points for why most gun laws aren't considered constitutional, because back prior to the ratification of the 14th Amendment, the Second Freedmen's Bureau, and the Civil Rights Act of 1866, it was not about what guns were banned or were not allowed. It was about who could own firearms. And actually, so it's one of those things that actually is one of the most crucial but crucial pieces of history. Because when you're looking at, you know, whether or not a gun law is constitutional, which I know a lot of people say no gun law is constitutional, but I'm talking about the strict legal back and forth that people are, you know, the courts are grappling with. You know, when you look at like an assault weapons ban, you know, case, there is no founding era history for the regulation of, you know, feature-based firearms, because at the founding era, it was about who could own firearms and who could not own firearms. And it's a really awkward moment to have the other side have to argue with what they're doing. It's crazy. It's crazy. But like, you know, because now they're having to, in order for them to try to get a gun law justified, if they have to use founding era, a lot of times they're having to justify racist gun laws or like reframe them.
Can you give an example of them doing it? I would love
reframe it. My favorite. I can give you the reframe, but my favorite line in all expert witness reports that I've read was, early American gun laws weren't racist. America was racist.
How does that?
So therefore, the intent was not racism. That was it was point. It was the end of a paragraph.
So there was no elaboration on that. It was just, that's the one-liner, guys.
Yeah, it was. I was just like, what? Academia is so weird. Like, because for a moment, the academic side of me was like, profound. And then I was like, wait, what? No, that makes no sense. A lot of times when the arguments that'll be made, if you're trying to use racist gun laws in the founding era, is you'll see with dangerous persons laws.
Okay.
It's bad. I was going to say, this is not good.
This is not helpful.
This is not, okay, so in order to argue in the courts that you can keep a gun law or that you get rid of a gun law, is you have to find what's called a historical analog. So it does not have to be the exact same law. You know, it doesn't have to be like magazines are banned in this 18th century. You know, that's not, but it has to be comparable enough that you can make the argument that was where people were at, that was the mindset, and since they did it here, we can do it there. So the only thing they got going for them is the fact that certain people couldn't own guns in the colonies. And so when you are trying to like do like Rahimi, right, like felons and firearms, that's their case, right? Like that's probably the best examples they've got is like of regulation of people, but it's super racist.
Right.
It's so bad. Like it is.
Like who are those people exactly? And they're like,
oh, it's a bunch of white guys.
Right.
Always, and that person was a white girl, was a white woman that had the racist line. But that's like they have to justify racist gun laws in order to try to justify the gun laws that they're trying to enforce today, but by doing so, they're saying racist gun laws are okay, and then they're also being racist because they're saying it's dangerous persons, right? Like
these are the same people that supposedly are advocating for minorities.
Yeah, is wild. Like it's like, and trust me, there's lots of stuff that like gun people do that's a bit of a stretch, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
That one is just like I really do want like a black person to sit there and like just be like, go on, like right, because like, and have them say it to their face.
Yeah.
You know, like it's that one is too much, but that's in order, if you're playing the game, that's your best example from that, and it ends up making you look so bad.
Yeah.
I don't know if the ends justify the means, but that is, you asked for the example, and that's it.
No, honestly, that's the best example you could have given on this show.
Yeah.
But to that point, I remember it was a few years, maybe 2021. Moms Demand Action actually posted a picture that said, "Would you allow this man to own a gun?" And at the bottom it said, "We wouldn't either." And it was a black dude. I was like, oh, well, y'all are just getting back to your original roots of racist gun control. And they eventually tried to take it down, but I had already screenshotted it off of Twitter. And every year I repost it and tag Shannon Watts. And it's like,
I think they do that with mental illness too, because there were laws in the colonies about mental illness. But and this isn't my area, but I believe that like even in cases of criminals owning guns back in the colonies, because there were regulations of that, they did get the guns back after a period of time, which is not how it is now. And so when you talk about felons and rights restoration, that's a pro-gun conversation, because the gun control side will say, well, there were laws that prohibited people with mental illness or people who had committed certain crimes from owning guns in the founding era, but then the other side of that is okay, and then after a period of time they were able to get them back, and that's not the case in a lot of circumstances nowadays. They like to say that's the case with mental illness, but it's really not.
Okay.
There are theoretically paths back, but it's not easy.
Right. No. Not
if at all possible.
Right. Going through the legalities of that is ridiculous. But I remember you saying something along the lines of bureaucracy is what actually stunts the technological developments in the gun industry.
No, not exactly. So
correct me then.
So what you're referring to?
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I 100% know. So what you're talking about is what I normally say, which is that the argument for weapons of war. So like people be like, we don't want weapons of war on our street, and that's where I always say, okay, cool, because I don't want crappy guns either. And that's because it's the interconnectivity between war and sport in terms of firearms technology that is really fascinating, and that civilians for pretty much all of gun history, with maybe the exception post the 86 Hughes Amendment, civilians have always had better guns because they're limited by their own budget and their imagination, whereas the government is limited by tactics, bureaucracy, and budget. And so that's where that comes in, is that that's the reason you don't see advanced technologies appearing on the battlefield right away, like rifling being developed in the 1400s and not appearing in mass on the battlefield until the Civil War in the U.S. There's wars earlier overseas. But rifling 1400s doesn't show up, really in infantry roles until the Civil War in the 1800s. So there's a long story for that, but these technologies that have been around for centuries not being adopted on the battlefield because of all the limiting factors that go into deciding how you need, like what guns you need, can you afford them, what are the tactics, who's shaking whose hand behind closed doors. So civilians have always had better firearms because they don't have to go through all of that. So that's what I mean by bureaucracy, of stifling innovation. It stifles government innovation, but not necessarily civilian.
Your favorite historical guns from the last 3 eras?
How are you defining eras? I don't like this question.
Let's go centuries.
Okay, my favorite historical guns from centuries. That feels no, we're not doing that.
You can't pick one from the 1900s?
From the 19, you want me to pick one gun?
From the 18, 19, and 20s.
You would pick one gun?
Just, okay, I mean, yeah.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Tell us about 3 of them then.
All right, one gun from the 1800s that I think is cool. Just cool?
Sure. One that you found like very fascinating when you did your research on it.
Okay, 1800s, the Chambers. Well, that was developed in the 1700s.
Okay, so we started 1700s. Now we go to 1800s. Tell us about the gun.
It was adopted in the War of 1812. That's why I was thinking about the 1800s. That's the Chambers. It was designed in the 1790s. It's a superposed firearm, meaning you stack the rounds in the barrel with one cocking mechanism. Only this one they used a different kind of ammo that allows one trigger pull, and the gun just goes boom, 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 boom. And they developed one that might be in the 1800s. I don't know what year they developed this one, but it fired 224 rounds with one trigger pull.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's 1700s, I guess. 1800s, cool gun. There's so many. I'm just trying to think of weird stuff. I really like, this is a bad gun. It's not a good gun.
I don't care.
But the harmonica guns, the Yare, J-A-R.
Wait, there was a harmonica gun?
This is what they call it because it looks like a harmonica.
You didn't actually like blow it to shoot
No,
it?
no, it's not a blow gun.
Whoa.
No, it was a rifle pistol form. Several people did it. Actually, Moses Browning's dad made one. But then most people know about I used to call it the Yare, but I don't know if it's like the Jare. It's Jarre. But yeah, it's like a gun, and then it's got this block, like a harmonica, and so it, instead of going like around in a circle, it goes dink, 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 dink.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's cool. 1900s, I'm not going to say any of the ones that people would say, right? Or the one I already mentioned previously, the machine rifle. So 1900s, let's see, what train wreck? Sorry, no, we were talking about good, decent guns. Maybe, I don't know. I like train wrecks. Good gun to historically significant something that is not what other people would say, because that's pointless. Let's see, 1900s. Just like going through my brain, which I like. This is a really difficult question. The Winchester light rifle, because it never went anywhere, but it was Winchester's submission against Armalite, which was a subsidiary of Fairchild, for what becomes the M16. Winchester submitted their version of, a selective fire gun. It was your stereotypical wood and steel, and it was a good gun. The Winchester Light Rifle Project, and it was a good gun. And Winchester made so many guns. They made the Garand. They have a carbine. I mean, they've been responsible for so many guns that, like, in all reality, the likelihood that Winchester could have won that contract was probably pretty strong, but Winchester pulled and it had a strong showing in the initial testing, but the government asked for some changes, and then Winchester ultimately was like, we don't have the money that Fairchild has. We're never going to be able to compete with this, so they pulled their prototype off the market, or not off the market, but from the trials, because they just knew they couldn't financially compete with that. But in reality, if they could have, they had much more of a name making military guns at that point. So that one, and then 2000s, Scar.
Really? Really?
Mm-hmm. What was I talking about?
Me neither.
Yep. Edit that out.
I will.
Don't say that.
I will. But that's why I'm laughing at.
Edit that out.
There you go.
But I love the scar. And that you can put it. I love the scar.
Okay.
I love a good Ugg boot, right? You know.
Well, all right. I'll yeah. So that's why you like the scar, because it reminds you of Ugg boots?
No, the scar is so cool. It looks cool, feels cool.
But it doesn't work in the field.
That's your opinion.
Okay. Yo, you're hilarious. All right.
The scar is cool. I think that the trials for it are really interesting because, you know, the SOCOM request for something that would be different than the M16 and the M4. That is what ultimately, I mean, that was the point. It was something that was going to be different. They didn't want it to be the same as the AR platforms. And so you got companies like FN. Colt submitted prototypes too, which is pretty interesting because how do they pivot off of the patent they bought from Armalite? And so yeah, the trials, if I'll have a smart answer, which is the trials in and of themselves are actually really interesting. I don't know, I just think it looks cool.
Okay, cool.
You seem so disappointed.
No, I'm not. That was so funny.
No.
But no, okay.
Just how I feel.
Tell everybody where they can find you, follow you, get in touch with you, watch you on TV, since you're a superstar. All of that.
Okay, so sometimes it's a little bit hard to find me, but if you're interested in all the work that we're doing at the Research Center, we're firearmsresearchcenter.org. We're all complicated there. And then their social medias are at Firearms Research or at Firearms Research Center. I think there's both. And then me, I don't really do a ton because nobody pays me to do my social media, but I'm at History and Heels, so you can generally know what I'm doing. I'm on Outdoor Channel every Wednesday. Right now. I was just on Fox Nation. Forgot to mention that earlier. We back on Fox Nation's Wanted Dead or Alive. Here we filmed the next few episodes. We're waiting on the approvals for that, but it got picked up. It got greenlit for another series of episodes, so you can find me there. Official Ashley Hlebinsky on Facebook, because yes, I still use Facebook.
Well, thank you for joining me. Thank you for doing all of the work that you do.
Thank you.
I literally look at you and it's like, man, she is taking this to different avenues that I don't think anybody else could.
Oh, thank you.
I really appreciate it. It's really refreshing and it's really inspiring. Someone else young in the industry doing the magnitude of work that you do is, to me, it's unmatched. I haven't seen anybody come close to what you do yet. So thank you very much, and I won't ask you any more questions because, yeah, we got to get out of here. We're out.